Welcome back to Special Topics. This is part 3 of the Special Topics PowerPoint. We are on slide 40 entitled The Ethical Role of the Teacher. Standards of ethics can be found at the federal, state, district, and school levels. All levels have codes related to the professional conduct of teachers. At the school level, teachers will have a school policy handbook, which will be important to follow as well. The handbook will reinforce district and state policy so that you can see from the federal level all the way down to the school level there are laws and policies in place that protects students and teachers relative to ethical conduct. Slide 41 entitled Classroom Law. This next section deals with classroom laws. If you go to the resource section and open up what is your legal rights scenario and legal decisions, read each scenario and select the response you believe is most appropriate and read the legal opinion that's related to it. I will review each legal opinion in slides 42 to 46. So if we go to slide 42, titled Classroom Law, Situation 1 deals with the school administrator wanting to know if you are going to marry and have children. He's posing that question in an interview to a female candidate. Title 7 and Title 9 protects individuals from having to answer such questions. And what would you do if someone asked you such a question during an interview? Slide 43 entitled Classroom Law. Title 9 protects individuals from harassment and discrimination. School districts will outline what constitutes harassment, sexual or otherwise, and keep in mind that this law protects students and all other employees within the school system. Sexual harassment can be teacher to student, student to teacher, teacher to teacher, teachers to support employee, for example, a custodian, parent to teacher, administrator to teacher, and teacher to administrator, etc. Slide 44, again entitled Classroom Law. Often the interpretation of a law will be based on the morals of the community and how the community interprets moral standards. For example, some communities and school districts will fire a teacher for DUI or use of marijuana, others will not. It's important to understand the moral context of the community in which you plan to live. Slide 45, entitled Classroom Law. When teaching, it's important that the content that is being taught is consistent with district and state standards. Although teachers have a degree of academic freedom, if a teacher chooses to teach outside of the standards, district curriculum, or to teach something that could be construed as controversial and beyond the standards, then it will be very difficult for a teacher to justify the content since there's really no connection to state standards or the district curriculum. So when teaching, teachers do have a degree of academic freedom, but it's very important that you be able to anchor or connect back to district or state standards to justify what you are teaching. Slide 46, titled Classroom Law. Teachers are often involved in school duties such as hall and cafeteria monitoring, bus ramp, playground, parent pickup, etc. It's important that teachers follow through and be able to effectively carry out their responsibilities related to such duties. If not, then they could be held liable for injuries that may result from negligence. So this is a very important area. Any duty responsibility that a teacher assumes, when your teacher assumes that responsibility, it's very important that they follow through. If there's a problem or an issue, or if a student gets hurt while they're on duty, then the possibility of negligence can always be present. So be vigilant in those responsibilities. Read and answer the sample questions from slide 47 to 51. Answers will be provided on slide 52. So you can go ahead and pause, and I will meet you over on slide 53. Hopefully you checked your answers and did well. And on slide 53, there's an important term called dispositions. And dispositions are behaviors and attitudes that teachers display. Often these are termed professional responsibilities. Dispositions cover the personal as well as professional way in which we behave. If you remember, and thinking back to the conceptual framework, dispositions are one of the columns that support the teacher preparation program. Knowledge, skills, dispositions, diversity, and technology. Slide 54, entitled The Classroom Context of Ethics. A school community usually consists of a mission or purpose, a vision of what the school is going to become, goals or things to be accomplished, and values. Values are how we are going to behave towards each other. They relate to ways in which we conduct ourselves within the context of school. Values are also an important consideration in the classroom. The following slides briefly touch on mission, vision, goals, and values. This slide, slide 55, entitled The Classroom Context of Ethics, discusses mission. A mission can be school as well as classroom related. It can be institutional or organizational as well as personal. So mission has to do with purpose. Why do we exist? Why do we get up every day and go to school? What's the purpose of our work? Slide 50 has to do with vision. A vision has to do with what we want the school or our classroom to become. Often teachers need to have a vision for a student as well, that a student may not have for him or herself. Slide 57, the context of ethics. Goals are related to what we want to accomplish in a school or organization. Goals should be limited in number and set in a manner that cause us to grow or to learn. They should also be attainable and realistic. So we have covered mission, purpose, vision, what do we want the school or our classroom or ourselves to become, and goals, what do we want to accomplish. Slide 58, the classroom context of ethics has to do with values, and values are where ethics reside. Values determine how we're going to behave and encompass attitudes, dispositions, behaviors, and commitments we have to our students, parents, and colleagues. Values provides the context for ethics, and often schools will have a mission statement, and they'll have a vision statement, and they certainly will have goals in their strategic plan, but very few schools really consider the idea of values or dispositions. How are we going to behave towards our customers, to students, to each other? This is a quote from Richard DeFore, who has written extensively about learning communities, which are based on mission, vision, goals, and values. And the quote states, "Values are the link between emotion and behavior, the connection between what we feel and what we do. With everything changing around us, we need something unchanging to hang on to, and values are our moral navigational devices." All four of these qualities are needed to create a learning community, but mission, vision, and goals can't be realized unless we have standards of behavior or ethics to help guide our behaviors and enable us to develop meaningful relationships with those involved in the educational process. If you go to the resources and click on Teaching as an Ethical Profession, which is a PDF, read the article and pay particular attention to each component. Keep in mind the following. What are 2 or 3 ideas that support each component? How can these components be considered ethical? Why should teaching practices be considered ethical? Note that each component is listed in the next slide, and that is a summary of each component is also on slide 63. So if you turn to go to slide 62, you can see in the article, Teaching as an Ethical Profession by Angela Lumpkin, you can see the 6 ethical components that are identified around integrity. And the next slide summarizes each component. Again, I consider these components as a part of the classroom. You won't necessarily be violating a standard if you don't care, if you don't reflect, if you don't have a student-centered culture. But I believe the components that are identified by Lumpkin really are the other side of the coin. They are the soft side of ethics, which can be just as important for students as those code of ethics that are described in the Georgia Code of Ethics. Slide 63 summarizes the components of Lumpkin's article. These components will be helpful as you construct your response to philosophy of education paper and you address the question, what is the ethical role of the teacher? I believe these will add a depth and a dimension to your paper that will be very helpful to you. Slide 64, based on teaching as an ethical profession and what you know about components, write and post a paragraph as to why you believe these components contribute to teaching as an ethical profession, and post that on Moodle Forum 2 as response 5. This concludes the third section of special topics, and we will go on to the last section of special topic, or the third section of special topics that have to do with philosophic perspective of teaching and education.